I came to Texas, my parents did, in 1978.
Grew up in a border town in Del Rio, Texas, in a segregated community.
Going to school in Fort Bend County was just like going to school at the United Nations. Everyone at the lunch table spoke a different language, brought food from different parts of the world, and that was just kind of the norm.
When I first moved here, a large part of that, of what we now look at as Asiatown and Chinatown, was literally grassland with cows grazing on it.
My community itself is a lot of young people that have recently graduated, but really have felt ties to either the university or political work because we're in proximity to the state capitol.
The big influential people in my life was my sister. You know, she worked for the state of Texas as well. What I share with her now that I didn't necessarily have in common with her then is that, you know, she could really nerd out about voting. And I think a lot of that kind of came from her belief, her genuine belief that, you know, government, when combined with like effective leadership, can really do a lot of good for people.
You never know when you need to reach out to your elected official.
I mean, there's just a long list of different things that people care about, that a majority of people care about, that don't get expressed in the legislature, and they don't get expressed in the Congress from our congressional representation. It's directly related to redistricting.
And so if we're not able to have people of our choice who understand our community or the needs of our community or the people who live in whatever district, how do we know that money is going to be spent in a way that actually benefits the people, all the people who live there?
Redistricting is a very important topic that should matter to everybody. Every voter that votes regularly should care about redistricting. The reason why is because redistricting affects our voting power. It affects the ability that we have to affect change. Here in Texas, yet again, there is another effort by conservative politicians, specifically Greg Abbott, our governor, to dilute the power of people of color voters in the state, and also to really diminish that by whatever way possible.
When I saw the proposed map for the congressional districts and to see that my community was moved into that's now a more rural community, I immediately thought, how do we have our needs met? When the grid failed a couple years in 2021, I reached out to my congresswoman, and she responded, and just wondering now, who do I call now?
And I remember on the screen, actually very vividly, there was a gerrymandered map, and this was in, I guess, early 2018, and they were describing voter suppression policy, and they were saying how this is the district that we live in, and it went up from Dallas through like parts of Southeast Texas and included only part of Austin, but UT was split between 4 congressional districts. And I remember asking the TA afterwards, but also just asking myself for a while, like, why we allowed policies to continue to exist like that, and also why, you know, if that was in part why policies continue to fail.
I wasn't really active politically until shortly before the last presidential election. But it didn't happen after the result of that election. It happened before, when I began to realize that there's something really kind of insidious happening in our country. And I felt like I need to be more explicitly politically engaged.
My mom was one that always said there is a way around everything, and it's up to us to find it.
The message that resonated about intentional discrimination, I thought was important for me to be able to say, I've been harmed by intentional discrimination in the drawing of these maps. And so, you know, that was really it. I was like, if they need a plaintiff, I'll be one.
Our focus was to mobilize Texans to be prepared, to engage, and even to provide testimony or commentary and remarks to their lawmakers going into the redistricting session, because it's a really intimidating process, especially if it's not something that you do habitually. And I feel like some of that might be a little bit by design.
When politicians gerrymander, it also is a kind of break of trust with the community that exacerbates, that continues, and creates more like voter apathy, disengagement, but also like anger, the sense that Government doesn't exist to serve you, it exists to serve itself.
Reach out to the people that represent you. Stay involved, just not, with voting, but beyond that. If it's any type of legislation that you disagree with, let your voices be heard.
Texas organizers, despite what folks outside of our state might think or write off about us, have proven time and time again that Texas is a place worth doing work in.
Whatever you do now, it will come back to you. Good or bad, it comes back to you or it comes back to your descendants.
The only time there's nothing you can do is when you do nothing, right? So realize you have power. There are more of us than there are of them.